All right, let's speak now to Mzwandile Mbeje, who is on standby for us. Mzwai, good afternoon to you. And if one were to take a step back to just 2021, not far, 2021, the president of the ANC, when he was speaking, tabling the party's manifesto, he speaks about how people want councillors that they know and they can trust, who are responsive to the community's concerns. Years later, here we are.
Well, quite an interesting one. A very good evening to you, Bongi, and the viewers. Quite an interesting one, even if you look at how the councillors were, rather the potential mayors, let me put it that way, were selected. That tells you that perhaps this time round the party really wants to up the accountability, because when you listen to so many things that the president has said, actually, it's not something new. The question is, how have they fared with regards to implementation? And I think that's where the party needs to really focus. Perhaps their new way of doing things in terms of putting up the potential candidates, having them go through that process they went through, is perhaps one way of getting them to account. So, as we have been saying earlier, even during the course of the rally itself, so we will only be able to see if this comes through when it happens.
And especially because, he speaks about how people want services, water, they want sanitation, they want, refuse removal. And just about a couple of days ago, I was in conversation with Dixon Masemola, and he says that when people experience local government, they experience it through some of these services. And if they have to track over time, it'll be important for them to tell us how they fared in this particular area, because if you still have people, for example, in Johannesburg saying they're spending 10 days without water, that's not a good experience at all.
Not at all, not at all. And the speech really was back to basics. If you are elected a councillor or a mayor, so what's your core responsibility really? I mean, you have to serve your communities. And if then your communities, those that you serve, are not able to then benefit from the kind of service that we are providing, I mean, what's the point of you being there? I think his speech was, it's about time that everyone who gets elected to that position so must really be able to carry out their responsibilities. And then, of course, carrying out those responsibilities, Bongiwe, means each and every council must have systems to be able to hold those accountable, and also to track their track record. I mean, are they able to do what they are supposed to do? The president also went further, Bongiwe, to speak about the issues of finances. You find in some instances that finances are not even spent because there's no capacity or there's no skill. So that is what has to change. In some areas, you'd find that service delivery is not happening, not because the resources are not there, but because either people who are supposed to do that maybe don't have the sufficient know-how, or they just are reckless insofar as carrying out their responsibilities are concerned. So this means they want to see their people back to basics. And then when you say back to basics, do you then have the systems to follow to ensure that those back to basics are fulfilled?
When it comes to the candidates themselves, because a number of people are reading a number of things into their decision to postpone that, if one could even use that word, because yesterday a lot of us were waiting to see who is going to, be put in which municipality as a candidate, following a process that their Secretary General described as vigorous when it comes to, those interviews. And yet here we are looking at some of the, metros and even municipalities. You see a number of names that they would have put out there. And the president today of the ANC speaking about how these are the people that they would have interviewed and they want to show them to members of the public. But you have other people that who are reading into this, that there could be some behind-the-scenes machinations that are responsible for what we are seeing. So what are you hearing in that regard?
It was a bit of a surprise, Bongiwe, yesterday when we had been called to hear the candidates, those who would have passed those interviews to be candidate mayors for the respective cities. But it was quite interesting that at the 11th hour, then we got told to say, actually, we are going to be shown people who have been called to be interviewed and then who who made the short list. So I found that quite interesting. But obviously, upon further digging, then we gathered that actually this process has not been easy. So it's also been fraught with its own internal divisions. So there's a lot of disagreements in certain areas about particular candidates. So and the issue of 2016, I guess, lingered very much on their minds, Bongiwe. You'd recall 2016 in Tshwane, when I think the ANC imposed who now is the National Assembly Speaker. Togo Didiza is the candidate for Tshwane, for the ANC. And people basically protested there because they had wanted Sputla, who is now the Minister of Electricity. So you'd recall when there was a no vote, no Sputla. So given that those perhaps memories started lingering in the minds of many, given some of the internal issues and divisions that were still there, I suspect the reason yesterday why we ended up seeing nominees versus candidates was exactly part of that, to say, because we haven't somehow agreed, yes, in other instances they were agreed, but there were those which are very key where they had not agreed. So I think as a compromise, perhaps they decided that, you know what, in the meantime, let's push this process back to September. That's what they said. For now, let's just communicate and then go and launch our manifesto. Already people have an idea. For example, let's talk Johannesburg. Everyone knew that Reverend Chikane had been interviewed. I mean, Dada Morero is the mayor. And then Loyiso Masuku is the chairperson of the ANC in the region. So we knew about those names, but we were not sure if they had made the cut as well. So when you saw them being paraded yesterday, all three of them, already you have an idea that the ANC will field one of them. But in the meantime, to avoid any potential protest in case there is, you parade all of them.
Quite interesting, and I remember those protests. I was on the ground at that time, and you know, quite a lot of memories there, especially given how upset the people of Tshwane were at that time. So, Mzwai, as you say, let's see then what happens in September, if they're able to then find each other and speak about that, because as you speak about Johannesburg alone, just the three names themselves, it tells you that there could be a lot also going on behind the scenes. But appreciate your time, quite the long day you've had. Politics editor Mzwandile Mbeje, who's been tracking this story for us, and we'll bring you some analysis on it in just a moment, but also speak to one of the ANC NEC members.